Hello, everyone, and welcome to Whale FM Makersplace edition. In this show, we talk about everything and anything art and crypto in the NFT scene with designers and creators alike, otherwise known as non-fungible tokens. Our guests today are the artists from the ArtNovo collective, pioneers in moving image who have pushed the boundaries of tech and experimentation to set new precedents, challenge cultural norms, and defy the artistic status quo. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us. Hi.
We're, we talked a little bit at the beginning about, this community and the NFT community in general. And, a lot of what I've read about your group really excited me because it correlates well with what the ethos of decentralization and, the crypto art movement really represents. Before we get into it, could you each give us a brief introduction on who you are and how you came to be part of this group?
Whoa, that okay? Shall I do it?
Start out.
Dive right in.
So you started it, so you start the introduction.
Okay, I'll jump in. So basically, I've been making my first piece of film art was 1971. So I am 850 years old. So hey, but about a year ago, no, 2 years ago. Sorry, Ryoma from Makersplace got in touch with me and said, I've been looking at your stuff, and I think, or we think, that it'd be interesting to get your kind of take on stuff in the NFT realm. And it took me some time to get my head around what's going on. It does. But you know what? We as a group, because we've got like most of the people here have got 40 years of work of experience. We echo the thing that everybody's into in the NFT realm in a way that comes from 40 years ago, which is when we were protesting about this or that or the other and dealing with capitalism and all of the problems that we were having to deal with. But the basic thing is this: we have a long experience in making video art and moving image video. But what we've done is we've negotiated every change in the history that's happened from then until now. And this is a change that we're trying to get our heads around. So I shall shut up and somebody else can speak.
Very cool. Thank you.
We're a group of shy artists.
Well, I can go in. Yeah, John, you go. Yeah.
I echo Terry's sentiment about connecting the past with the present and the opportunity to wade in and explore and then create for a brand new medium, not just the format and structure of NFTs, but the decentralized nature of how the work gets created, distributed, and then collected was very, very appealing. So early digital tools gave artists a certain amount of freedom. Distribution like YouTube and other permissible avenues was very exciting and inspiring. And now, in terms of how you craft a work, how you position a work, and how that work is consumed, is in a brand new place. And so, because we've been doing this, either by beating our heads against the wall or by being as clever as we possibly can, another challenge, another series of investigative steps, and perhaps another way of changing what is to what should be.
Right. And just to ground everybody, you mentioned YouTube, John, where you have astronomical numbers, 20 million views, 100,000 plus subs. So certainly talking from experience there. Thank you for sharing.
And that's a curious thing because that was never my intention. My intention was to follow the vision of my great master, Namjoon Paik, who said that at some day in the future, everyone would have their own television network. And in fact, YouTube is exactly that. The work gravitates to an audience is attracted to things that are compelling. And here's a situation where that's turned up to 11 and the knob is cranked off.
Right.
I think NFTs propose an interesting format. And as we've been exploring the frontiers of what video can be, NFTs are presenting us with a new set of parameters. However, I think it's important, at least from my point of view, but I think all of us would agree, that somehow the work that we're doing with this NFT platform or for this NFT platform is somehow also connected both to our real works and functional to being exhibited in real life situations. So the works that I'm presenting are, of course, they're visible on Makersplace and they can be acquired there, they can be kept, but they're also functional in a way for the design of an exhibition, for the creation of an exhibition where they will be visible as more tangible works. And so there is an interrelationship I see between the artwork as a purely digital work in the digital format and its physical counterpart in the exhibition. I see NFTs as a kind of a development of what could be video installation, or it could be a development of what is photography with either still images or motion. It's part of that same visual possibilities. It's basically just a new possibility, and it's great to be exploring that.
Yeah, we're excited to see what you can come with and definitely flesh that out. I'm very intrigued to hear, your take on how it can be exploratory of culture, being that NFT had kind of evolved into a culture in and of itself. But we could talk more about that when we get to your pieces, Theo.
Sure.
Who's next?
You look, come on, Gully.
Okay, I can go. Yeah, so as you see, we are composed from different backgrounds. We cover range between 20 years and 50 years of experience. 20 years was the minimum request, and I kind of got exactly there. So I always try to find new tools, new technologies that can be used to say something about life, basically, existence, our mortality, the things that go around in the world, and try to encapsulate that in like audiovisual form. So it's just something that I feel that I have to do, kind of compelled to do. And I worked a lot with Glitch, which I found like really poetic and amazing. But in the last about couple of years, I'm really focusing on AI and the opportunities and the options that are there to create totally new images that we've never seen before. So I'm very happy to be with this group. We are kind of experimental group. We're all kind of experimenting in different ways, both distribution, presentation, and also making. So it's really interesting to see all the works together, and it's kind of like an evolving kind of project. that we'll see where exactly it's going to go.
Thank you for sharing. Glitch and AI, two styles very near and dear to my heart. I'm sure our community is talking about that right now. Thank you.
Sure.
Irit, Natasha, speak.
Speak.
All right.
There's one.
Go, Natasha.
Go, Natasha. Okay. So my name is Natasha Presentsterns. I am Slovenian originally, and I've been creating moving images of all kinds. I tried, film, video, installations, just about every avenue of moving image, and that was always my thing, to be open to this. Different possibilities, trying to find different ways of narrative expression, visual expression through moving image. In fact, this is my whole start was like that. I studied graphic design in Slovenian Academy of Fine Arts, and I was already working as a graphic designer, but then there was this small class that was not required, and nobody really took it. And it was called Video Aesthetics, Moving Image, something really, really long title. And for me, I took the class, and that was kind of it. It was love at first sight, and I just ran with it. And all of a sudden, I started feeling, wow, this is I can feel like, what's something that I can express. I can feel confident and excited to explore all these possibilities. And now with NFTs, this is just another avenue to another step. The closest one for me is I've done a lot of video installations, so it means video loops, these miniatures that are actually can work on their own. So this is basically how I started with my first two NFTs that I'm presenting now on Makersplace. Yeah, that's kind of my story. I was intrigued by the crypto art world before, but of course it took Terry and his invitation to this fantastic group, and I feel really excited and fortunate to be part of the group, to be supported by all these creative individuals that are kind of, we are challenging each other, we're supporting each other. It's fantastic.
Very cool.
So good evening. Good evening here in Lisbon. I'm Irit Batswe. I started doing video art in Israel in 1980, so it goes back a long way. I moved to New York in 83, and most of the 80s and 90s, my practice was mostly image processing. I was connected closely to the Experimental TV Center in Oswego, which gave artists tools that allowed us to interfere with the image, to process the image, to change the image. And this is way before personal computers, software, etc. So this was really a fascinating time. It was a time that I and other artists around me felt that we were writing new words in a dictionary, new words in a dictionary of images. And I think this marked my what I'm interested in art. Even though it evolved later to large-scale site-specific video installations. And in the last few years, I'm working with cinema film, which I work with physically. So 35 millimeter and 16 8 millimeter that I'm changing physically with the elements. I know very little about NFTs. I started learning with the group, and it's a little baffling. It's a little strange. There are things that don't really correlate to what I'd say the human ways of interaction that I'm used to. But I'm very curious.
Well, thank you for sharing, everyone, and giving us all some grounding and context on who you are as individual artists. Let's talk about ArtNovo Collective. What was the impetus to come together, and what was kind of your objective in doing so? You have tons of commercial, critical success. You're collected by museums, a long career and track record of really laying foundations for some incredible advancements in how things are done visually, as well as, collected and whatnot. What was the purpose of coming together, and what was the vision?
John?
Can I jump in? Or Teo, go for it.
John.
Oh, I think that you've put your finger on many of the things. We all like challenges, and we've all spent decades in finding new ways to challenge ourselves, to challenge the marketplace, to challenge the nature of art itself. Video art, when I first started making it, was a slap in the face to traditional art forms. It said we're a product of television, we're a product of music, we're a product of performance. And all of that evolved, and it evolved because we all got our hands involved. We all decided to shape this medium. And that challenge is something that we saw again with NFTs, the challenge of creation, the challenge of distribution, and the challenge of challenges themselves. It's like answering the question by asking the question. And so ArtNovo, since we're all like-minded, and in the last 6 months have become very, very good friends, we rose to that challenge. And by doing that, we've said, all right, this is just part of what we've been doing for years. It's another episode. And as such, we're going to enjoy ourselves.
I think part of our experience is also jumping into the unknown. Mm-hmm. As artists, you don't do what is known. You dive into something that's unknown, whether it's unknown in terms of a medium or whether it's an unknown part of yourself, your own consciousness. And I think NFTs allows us to jump into a new unknown and bring our experience into being able to dive into this unknown and see where we come out. Unless we challenge ourselves, that's what makes us happy. That's what makes us also, I think, successful as artists, is this ability to jump into the deep end and see how we come out of it. And that, I think, part of the process of entering NFTs and bringing our experience of form, of style, of all the kind of things you might say, gives us the NFTs gives us a new unknown territory in which to make a mark, in which to say something, in which to make a statement.
I think it's also, we talked about challenging ourselves. It's also about challenging the art world in a way.
Yeah,
it's definitely. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, kick ass.
Yeah. I mean, it's a new world. It's a new, it's the digital renaissance, and it opens a lot of opportunities and options that haven't existed really before. So for us, it's great. And I find myself focusing now only on NFTs because you can both, it's like almost like an exhibition space, and many thanks to Makerspace for the, for the environment for that, to show work, communicate with people all around the world, communicate with collectors that, we didn't have access to until now, and actually selling, because I already sold, and it's great, and also the conditions of sale are good, to be honest. It's so it's like a full circle of distribution, exhibition, but also we see it as a research, as an artistic research that we all do. It's not, it's that's the most important thing, is that we all artists, we do video art every day, and it's great actually to communicate, with everybody else here in the group about the work and show it and see what it does and experiment with it in different tools. So I think it's also what we are about, providing this alternative.
Yeah, I would say I would be optimistic. I mean, I don't think we're necessarily challenging the art world. I think we are part of the art world, and I think it's NFTs as a whole that's challenging the art world, and so we are part of that group of people that are in the art world and are also on the frontier of it. And I think, NFTs are part of the frontier of the art world. I don't think that there is an in and out. As artists, we are the art world. And
yeah, we're not negating, the art world, but we definitely, the whole NFT art world is, kind of highlighting some issues that existed before. We can't really run away from it, and there are many.
This is really, really seriously important. I mean, for me, this is a partnership with collectors, which is not a thing that's going to happen in the art world. The fact that the art that's being made has a particular ethos to it, and that the collectors understand that ethos, that is seriously important, and that's what we're chasing, really. And we need you guys to talk to us about. We need to talk about what is the most seriously important thing in this domain. I mean, that's for me is the thing. Sorry, John. Carry on.
No, I would just. I'm glad we're getting here because I love television. I love YouTube. I love the freedom of having a broad conversation with a broad audience. But I also like the definition and the identity of an NFT work as something collected and treasured and to a certain extent invested in, which there's no other way to actually kind of quantify that. For many years, my work has been distributed. Private collectors and institutions have bought it, but they've bought a videotape or they've bought a file, and it's a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about something where the intention of the artist and the intention of the collector are inextricably connected. And that's really exciting. It's very different for me because I like the ether.
Right. Yeah, but I also wanted to add that this is like really immediate relationship and exposure to the really wide audience, because I think part of the problem of the traditional art world at the moment is that it kind of became somewhat hermetic, turned into itself into like a circle of artists, creators, collectors, galleries, and it's not, for example, here in the United States, it's rarely part of the media, or in Europe it's a little better, but here it's and I think with NFT this is expanding, or challenging at least. So I think that's why traditional art world is taking curiosity into the crypto art world, I think,
Yeah, there's some comments within our community that they really appreciate the way you guys are talking about it, because it's what this movement originated as. It wasn't a bunch of people making pictures of monkeys and selling them 10,000 of them for exorbitant amounts. It was people that were experimenting with the technology of blockchain and art and saying, how can we do something different? How can we create a different dynamic with people that are experiencing or collecting, or for us to preserve what we do? It was 100% just to experiment. And the reason why the economic elements came into being was because that's how the blockchain moved at that point, right? There was a transaction, right? And so it's evolved into what it is. And there's a lot of positives in that dynamic, but we love to hear that there's, genuine, authentic desire to experiment. And that's really the impetus of this. And also, we often see kind of the opposite from the traditional art world, right? It's a little bit unnerving, maybe, what's happening in the NFT space. I'll never forget a conversation that I was a part of on Clubhouse when that was relatively big. That was a social network where you go on and speak with a large group. And there was a panel with some museum curators, as well as, various personalities from the traditional art world and the NFT world. And one of the comments that really stuck with me is they said, well, how can this have any value? There's no one telling everybody what's good and what's not good art. And everybody said that is the point, right? It's the democratization of art. It's the circumvention of gatekeepers. It's the ability to let artists have that relationship directly with the populace. And there's nuance to it. There's things that we're still working out, but the ability to do that is a disruptor. And you guys sound like you've always been disruptors throughout your careers.
The gatekeeper.
And I think when I began, I think when we all began, sorry to interrupt you, John, when we all began, I think we had a dream, and that was to make art that would go straight into people's living rooms. Mm-hmm. So that we could not go to the gallery and go through that system, but make art that would go straight into people's living rooms. And now it's almost as if that reality has become real, finally. Of course, museums have eventually caught up with video artists and have started collecting them, just like they will catch up with NFTs and start collecting them as well in the future. But our mission, I think, as video artists, has always been to just have a direct connection to whoever it is that appreciates it.
The glory of structure is understandability and quantification. But the gatekeeper aspect of structure in certain environments is as much a prohibitor for real experimentation and expression as it is something that allows people to understand or perceive the value of one experience versus another experience. There's often a discussion about high art versus low art, which is just a complete, it's a pitch in the dirt. You don't swing at a pitch like that. You just ignore it. Because what reality is as the artist creates something, there is an audience for it. It doesn't necessarily have to be a gated audience. You don't have to buy a ticket. And that connection, as close as you can make that connection between the ideation, the craft, and the consumption, whether it's absorbing something through the ether or whether it's actually being able to collect something, the closer you can make those two impulses, the better it is for everybody, because you're actually going to be able to see through someone else's eyes. You're going to be able to feel through their heart. You're going to be able to capture a little bit of their soul and embrace it.
Yeah, but what's interesting is to see the new art that is emerging in crypto art. You know, there's a lot of work that just you don't really see much in museums and galleries. And I live in London, you know, I go to everything. A lot of 3D animation and AI stuff, just a huge amount. And I see a lot of creativity and art there. And so it's not just a new, like territory or a new place to show work. It's also kind of like, make it prosper, make a certain kind of art prospering. So I think it's a digital renaissance, also in the art form itself, which is really, really, really exciting. And I wonder where it's going to go, what impact it's going to have in, a year, 2 years, 5 years, what it's doing to art. I really think it's, the new avant-garde, to be honest.
It is, yeah. It is a new avant-garde, and it's also changed the economic relationships. One sells quite rarely to a museum, and therefore one prices one's work very highly, and one limits it. With NFTs, the price is much lower in comparison. Of course, it can be high in exceptional situations, but it's a great opportunity, I think, for collectors to be collecting what they consider to be artworks that will last in time. Because at the moment, the prices are very low and the connection with the artist is direct. And therefore, it is, in investment terms, and I know nothing about investments, believe me, but it does seem like a good deal.
Well, actually, you have artists selling for quite a lot. People, of course, that is an inspiration.
He's not an inspiration. He's an exception.
Well, okay. I'm not sure about that. There's, other people also sold quite a lot. So I think there is actually, if you check the numbers, it's a very fastly growing market.
It is.
So Yeah, and with a lot of people that sell actually for quite a lot. So yeah.
Well, I think the value proposition is definitely different. There's some discussion in our community often about it being an experiential thing. People participate in this because they feel like they are a part of the artist in a way that they can't be otherwise, and so that's a unique value proposition that's hard to replicate in other ways. So there's various ways that artists leverage that with editions, with one-of-ones, with utility, with experiences. But that's the beauty of it, right? We're at the forefront of experimentation. So I want to pick your brains for the entire hour, but I want to make sure I also highlight the incredible work that you guys have put together for this Genesis drop on Makersplace. If I understand this correctly, this is your Genesis drop as a collective. Terry, you obviously have pieces that you've dropped beforehand, but we have two pieces from each of the members kind of highlighting, their perspective and what they wanted to show for this particular highlight. If we could, I'd love to just talk about the individual pieces a little bit and hear from the artists.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's my pieces there, so maybe I can start talking there. Yeah, so I also sold some before, also on Makerspace, and I continue this line of working with AI. This one is called Generation AI. So it's a reflection about what's happening to, future generation that is actually already here. Humans merge with artificial intelligence, and using actually the technology of AI to manifest some sort of audiovisual poem about this idea of what's happening to us. And I pictured there a kind of like a little story that I create by prompting, by using kind of like elaborate text and animation to tell this story, which is it's kind of a limbo. You're kind of stuck in between. It's a continuous loop of going back and forth, actually forth and back, from this kind of hybrid creature, human and machine, and also a history of art, of grotesque and other images, going to sort of like a rave, like a party in like in a place that could be sunset or it could be sunrise, which is kind of a metaphor to where we're going. Basically, I really wonder where we're going, like in the world in terms of technology, what it's going to do to us, and what's going on in the world when you see all kind of issues that are happening. So so that's mainly about this work.
I love it, and I love the care to have that so seamlessly loop, which is a small thing, but it doesn't always happen. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you. Yeah, you're kind of stuck in this world, like infinitely in a way. And it's really interesting the ways repetition brings up like new thought when you watch it, like something few times. It's kind of fascinating to see the ideas that come up from this repetition. So it's worth to see it like few loops. And I like this idea of like lose yourself in the image, this like zooming in, something that AI can do because it's generating new images. So as you go here, for example, that's from our group exhibition. And it's the abstract work, Fugator Abstractum, and it's from Latin colorful abstract, and I kind of connected early work of abstract art, especially post World War II, abstract expressionism, and kind of connected it to this very advanced technology of AI, so you can like actually dive into this painting and create this experience that you couldn't really create before. So and actually going to the very basic aspect of images, of what are images, how they're made out of light and color and movement in the case of a moving image. So and it's a bit a long work for NFT. It's 1 minute and 20 seconds, and it has original music with my collaborator, and it's a new work for me to do this kind of abstract. I just thought like, where can I take this, this kind of AI processing, and connecting back to abstract paintings. So it's really, it was a fun experience.
Yeah, and there's some comments here relative to the texture being, looking organic and kind of melding the two worlds and people being appreciative of that as well.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought. That's actually the main challenge with AI, to make it look organic. Like the dream is to create images, that look like they were filmed, like they were like videotaped, and that's gonna be amazing. You can basically write like a whole feature film. Even you can just like go straight from a screenplay to a film, or and you can create these crazy worlds with it. So yeah, the whole thing is very exciting, and try to create there. I think that the use of like paint kind of got it closer to more like organic and real in a way.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing some context on those.
Sure. Thank you.
Natasha?
Yeah, so these are my two pieces. The first one here, it's called Torso, and it's part of the first one in the series Between Body and Space. And what we see here, it's layers, many layers of female torso that it's isolated from the rest of the body, and it's creating like kind of an optical membrane that it's going from figurative to abstract and back, and creating all kind of associations to other things. I like my work to have a certain open and to kind of it's open to interpretation, so people can see their own things in the work. And a lot of my work, maybe majority, like sources out of human body. If I quote one of my favorite philosophers, Nietzsche, there's more wisdom in your body than in your deepest thought, I think it goes. I kind of believe that, and I'm also quite a intuitive artist, so I always go by kind of a gut feeling, and everything is coming out of the body, and how body expands into the space, expands into the environment, how it's being part of the environment, part of others, and part of wider context, let's say. And maybe we can go to the second work, which is also figurative, and it's a part of the first piece in the series, Hotel Diary. And this series, it's all created, was shot in this old abandoned or closed down for a long time Hotel Rendon in downtown Los Angeles. I talked to former owners and inhabitants about stories from that hotel, and I came up with that semi-imaginary love story from that hotel, and memories, and all these like piled up through years, emotions and memories that are kind of in part of that space. I kind of wanted to record what is already there, even though I created it. I don't know if that makes any sense, but for example, this is just the first one, but like the others that are coming up, the NFTs, are with two figures, with a man and a woman, and I, for example, shot them separately and then layered them together to create this feeling of being together and apart at the same time. So I'm kind of using these kind of tricks to create a certain atmosphere and emotion that could hopefully communicate with somebody who watches it.
Thank you for sharing. It's definitely emotive. As I watched it, I was saying to myself, I would love to have this on a mural on my wall and watch it live, moving. I think it would be a great piece for someone to collect and have. And John, your pieces are here as well.
Yeah, the two works I saw as kind of bookends for our release. The idea of an initial work that makes a certain kind of statement, and then a second work that sort of doubles back on that initial statement. So the Birds Fly Pixelated is a very small bit of stock footage that I bought a few years ago for a much larger project. But I became absolutely hypnotically attached to this handful of seconds of these birds flying across the screen. And I saw in that singular gesture something that was very atomic. It existed on a micro level, but as I amplified it by processing it, painting it, pixelating it, it took on kind of mythic proportions for me. And one of the interesting things was adapting my way of thinking with the formats for NFTs. So this does loop, both sound-wise and image-wise, but within that loop, there are also other loops. So the birds flying across is one level of loop, the kind of processing is another kind of loop. And I thought about that from a textural standpoint, almost like, can I reduce this to matter? And it turns out, yes, I can. The second piece, I'm working with a new group called the Collective Attention, and we're working on a larger series of pieces. And within one of those, I thought, here's a really interesting way to conceal and reveal at the same time. So these are two dancers. They are multiplied. There are different takes that are superimposed. And then I'm using a mask of the dancers' movements to cut out the dancers themselves. So essentially they are dancing with each other, but they're doing it purely in an electronic space. And again, I'm fascinated by the power of the repetition with variations inside that repetition as something that just shout out to you. It's textural, it's very poetic. I find it very romantic because it describes the relationship of the two performers and the way that they kind of complement each other. The loop here is that it goes to black, but the piece is about growth. It's about seeds. It's about what happens when we're going from nothing to something, that we're going to eventually return to nothing. I also like the very gentle touches at the beginning and the end, where you just get a sense of the humanity of the performers, but without any sense of gravity.
Mesmerizing for sure. Someone in the community commented that they really love that it seems that these two performers are reaching out to each other. That's what they interpreted from it. So evoking emotion and you know, definitely stirring something in people.
Yeah. Cool.
Theo. Theo, I think you're on mute at the moment.
I'm here now.
Ah, thank you.
This is a technique I developed when I started making video art of, I thought the video image was pretty ugly. And so I thought I could make it prettier by using projections and by using lights in a very unusual way. And so I developed a technique of projecting. I developed a way of projecting images onto people to create a nice, more interesting image, because the early video images I thought were pretty ugly. And so I made video art pieces using these projections. And then I developed this technique further by incorporating it in documentaries, where there was a narrative, where the visualization of what was being told was made with this technique. I've done then quite a large video installation, which I presented at Documenta, where these images were projected on a very large banner, and so they were used within a video installation. I think with NFTs, it enables me to return to the idea of portraiture, to use these images as if they're single portraits that have motion in them, yet they have this static, you know, they're static like a photograph. And so they're being developed as a sort of a collection of portraits. They loop. You don't know where the loop point is, but they can be constantly visible. And lately I've been working with ethnographic collections and museums, and really looking at the value of representation in terms of belonging, in terms of identity. Who does an image belong to? I mean, this is, for example, a Benin bronze, and Benin bronzes have become emblems of looted art because they were taken through a punitive expedition from Benin City and collected in museums, and their restitution has been demanded by the people from Benin City. And so they are controversial objects. And my suggestion is maybe museums should be, or people should be collecting them as just reinterpretations, and give the real artifacts back to the people to whom they belong.
Mm.
Very interesting. There's a lot of discussion right now on representation in the NFT space and making sure that we get this right and, change some of the paradigm that may be an issue in the traditional art world. So appreciate that context.
John, can you talk about Robert?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Robert Cayenne is the French master of video art. I've known him for decades and decades, and I'm always inspired by the way that he frames an image, the way that he processes time, that he creates these very evocative scenarios out of seemingly the most simplest of materials. I feel like the two works that he's put here really manage the things that he is most invested in, that I find he does better than anybody else. This idea that something that is very ordinary has an extraordinary dimension. Mm. And the extraordinariness of that dimension is only yours if you spend the time and give your focus to how he is showing you what he wants you to see. I also like the time base that he uses. I'm very insistent, and he's very patient. The patience that he brings to you, he pays back, because as you spend the time, the message becomes clearer and clearer. It's never, it's not as articulated as other artists, but it has a value because it stays with you. It stays with you over time. Can you go to the other piece for just a second? This is really interesting because this has the musicality that I also find very rich in his work. Here is a theme with variations that he brings out in slow movements, like the way a composer will push something forward. It's quite beautiful. So Robert Cayenne from France. I'm so pleased that he's part of our collective, because he represents an aspect of the history of video art, the history of French art, the history of French video art. He's just a real master.
Thank you so much for sharing some more about Robert.
Okay, kaleidoscopes. When I was invited by Terry and the group to participate in this experiment, and I started thinking of what I would like to put as an NFT, I didn't want to take the usual video art that I do, and I just decided to do things especially for that. But I wanted also to deal with things that were like everyday life, that I guess it also was the result of the pandemic. So I started looking at nature, which I haven't before. And this kaleidoscope is images that I captured in the garden of the palace nearby, like 3 minutes from my place. It's also the headquarters of the Triennale of Architecture of Lisbon. And it's actually quite simple. It's contemplative, it's slow, but it deals with fractured time, with fractured space, and rebuilt spaces and time. And the other piece
It's
Mhm.
always
So
it's always beautiful when you see the symmetry that can be in architecture and in nature.
yeah. This is even closer to home. This is in my balcony. It's one plant. It's a bougainvillea. And the bougainvillea for me is very connected to the Mediterranean, to Brazil, to warm places. And again, during the pandemic is when I got this plant. And then I started looking more and more into the plant, finding patterns, textures, colors, light, and the two pieces go between representation and abstraction, which is something that I do in my work anyway. And they're very simple.
Thank you so much for some insight into your thought process and inspiration. And Terry, your pieces as well.
Okay. Yeah, some background is that so artists sometimes have to do other things to earn money, and basically for 30 years I was a cinematographer, and my whole thing was dealing with tracks and dollies and big film shoots and big cameras and all the rest of it. And one of the things that I've been doing recently as a kind of rejection of that whole thing is to come down to the iPhone or the Samsung or whatever smartphone basically. So I shot Prehistoric, which is this one, on an iPhone. And because I guess I know stuff about how to capture, so I can get the camera within the iPhone to do stuff. But what I was really, really, really interested in here was that I went to an island off the African coast, and when you go to a place like this, it's a bit like being in New Mexico, but surrounded by lagoons that you'd find in Costa Rica. So you're seeing it right here, right now, basically. If you fall over in Fuerteventura, you will cut your hand because the rock is not yet worn down, so it breaks your skin, so it's very visceral. And things that go on in Fuerteventura, look at this. This is basically a festival where when people get married in a place like Fuerteventura, it's a ritual. It's not the same deal as going to the Elvis Chapel of Love in Las Vegas. It's a whole thing. So I was like I'm rambling, but fundamentally, what I was trying to do was find a visceral response, an emotional response to being alive and awake where we are. I mean, okay, we're dealing with the digital, but at the same time, there's this kind of ghastly kind of character that follows us, which is that guy, which reminds us about being alive on the planet. And so that's what Prehistoric was about. It's set 15,000 years in the past. And then because I've always loved science fiction because of its the way it reveals our futures. You know, the Star Trek writers of the 60s were basically writing the futures that were coming to us. So with the next piece, Metamorphs, it struck me that I needed to look at the paleomorphs that were the early humans, paleomorphs, where the consciousness was residing in, but to look at how future, and I kind of visualized a way in which if we stepped upon an upload platform in 15,000 years time, so there's 30,000 years between these two works. If we stepped on an upload platform, we'd drop our bodies and we'd upload our consciousness into a metamorph. Any chance of playing any of that? Can you find that one?
Yeah.
So I tried to visualize
playing right now
the ways in which we would travel between star systems. So I've got this kind of
Terry, I think your connection is beaming you into
imagination that tries to an overview.
Terry, I think you may be having a bit of connection problems, or your pieces are so resource intensive and so impressive that it's
go to it and press the button and click and see. So
yeah, it's playing.
The two works that I had were about the analog effectively, where we've come from, because that's what I came from when I first was coming into this world, and the digital.
Well, Terry, that's definitely a great juxtaposition. I can tell you when I especially looked at prehistoric, I could feel something, right? It was an experience. So super impressive. People keep going on and on about the fact that it was made on an iPhone. So I think you'll have some people experimenting shortly after this for sure.
Just the digital, but the quantum, because the quantum is
right. Terry's trying to beam back in. For the rest of the group, while Terry gets his connection working, what's next for the collective? Obviously, you've dropped your Genesis drop. People can check it out here on Makersplace. Be sure to go. And right on the front page, you can find the ArtNovo collective. These are the individual pieces from all of you. What's next? Is there a goal? Are you trying to add new members? Is there more experimentation? How can people take part and stay on top of what you guys are doing?
I think all of the above. We do want to add more members. We want to grow more diverse. We also want to be as inclusive as we possibly can. Right now we're international, but I think there are other communities we would like to connect with. And I think we want to take what we've learned from this experience and apply it to creating more works, doing more releases. We're very pleased with the relationship with Makerspace. We'd like to push that further. But as with all things, we are not going to know what the next step is until we're about to take it.
Well, I think you've definitely made fans from what I'm seeing in the community, especially with you sharing at the onset why you are involved in this, and it really being what seems like a natural progression to what you guys have always done. So thank you so much for coming and sharing with the community today. We look forward to watching your success both with this drop and what you guys do in the future.
Thank you, Nightmare.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.
Have a great
Lovely
one.
to meet you.
Ciao.
Ciao.
All right, bye. Thank you.
Bye.